I want you to imagine, just for a second, a federal database that knows the exact day a stranger became your parent.
Right.
It logs, nearly 200 highly specific facts about the child you became on that exact day. It tracks the date your separation happened down to the actual 24-hour period.
Yeah, the precision is staggering.
But it has deliberately, mechanically deleted your original name. It counts the severance to the very day, but it keeps absolutely nothing of what was actually severed.
It's a really striking structural paradox, isn't it?
It really is.
We're looking at a system built on absolute granular statistical precision, which, simultaneously executes this total erasure of the individual.
Yeah.
We naturally expect a database of that immense scale to function as a flawless memory bank. But when you examine the architecture of this particular system, when you really get under the hood, you realize the amnesia isn't a glitch. The amnesia is the point.
When I was first reading the essay and the data analysis we're diving into today, the piece titled, "The Database That Counts Your Severance and Keeps None of Your Name," I felt this immediate physical recognition.
Right, that embodied response.
Exactly. As an adopted person, you recognize this architecture in your own body. It's in this almost subsonic register long before you ever actually look at a data schema.
Yeah.
You know exactly what it feels like to be highly tracked but completely unknown.
Yes.
So today, we're going to unpack exactly how that feeling is structurally produced.
Which requires a pretty forensic look at the actual mechanisms that govern adoption records in the United States.
Right.
We have to look at the primary source documents, the federal schemas, the state statutes, to really prove how this identity erasure is actively engineered.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because what we're talking about today isn't some historical accident, right?
No, not at all.
This isn't a story about, a filing cabinet that caught fire in a basement in 1972 and the papers got lost. The author calls this the architecture of silence.
Yes, exactly.
It's an exploration of how the erasure of an adoptee's identity is a highly engineered two-lock system.
And to understand how that silence is enforced, we really have to examine the first lock in the system, which is the federal machinery that captures the data.
Okay.
We have to start with AFCARS.
AFCARS.
Right.
Right. The Adoption and Foster Care Analysis and Reporting System.
Correct. It is the only comprehensive federal system that records case-level data on every single adoption completed with federal Title 40 involvement in the United States.
Hold on, let me stop you there for a second. Title 4E. What does that actually mean in practice?
Right. The bureaucratic terminology.
Yeah. Does this database only apply to a really specific subset of adoptions?
So Title 4E refers to the federal funding stream for child welfare.
Okay.
So if a state child welfare agency is involved and federal dollars are tied to the care or the adoption subsidy for that child, they are entered into AFCARS.
Wow.
It is a massive ongoing demographic census of children in the system. And when we look at the live schema for this database,
The blueprint.
right, the actual structural blueprint of what the government chooses to collect, we see something remarkable. The schema collects 186 out-of-home care data points, plus a separate file of 37 specific adoption elements.
Over 200 distinct data points on a single human life.
Yes.
That is just an incredibly granular level of surveillance. What exactly are they tracking with that much detail?
Well, they're tracking demographics, race, ethnicity. They track the exact funding streams paying for the child's care.
Right, following money.
Exactly. They track the precise dates that parental rights were terminated by a court and the precise dates the final adoption decree was issued.
So they have the exact timeline.
Down to the day.
Yeah.
But when you look at the fields regarding the birth parents, they are reduced entirely to aggregate characteristics.
Like what?
A race category here, a tribal membership flag there. There is no element in that vast, 200-point schema that records the child's original name, their original birth certificate number, or any retrievable identifier for the people they were born to.
So it captures the legal severance as this cold demographic event.
Yes.
But it doesn't just passively fail to ask for the name, right?
Yeah.
The system actively scrambles the identifying information it does collect.
Yes. That is the active de-identification process.
Which is built in.
Right. It is a mechanical requirement of the system. Any identifiers that might accidentally point back to a specific individual are explicitly encrypted.
Give me an example of that.
For example, if a child is adopted in a smaller community where they might be easily recognized by demographic markers, the county codes are completely suppressed in the data.
Wow.
But the most visceral mechanism of this encryption is what they do to the child's date of birth. Every adopted child's date of birth is recoded in the public data set to the 15th of the month.
They legally blur the birthday.
To the 15th, yes.
Just think about the bodily reality of that for a second, right? A birthday is the one objective anchor a body has to its own arrival in the world.
It's the starting line.
Yeah. And the federal government statistically smooths it over to the middle of the month just so you cannot be picked out of a lineup.
Precisely.
It's as if the government is writing a meticulously detailed 200-page biography of your life logging, every physical movement, every dollar spent on your care, the exact day your history was legally cut.
Right.
But they are intentionally blacking out the prologue and encrypting the character names so you, the actual subject of the biography, can never read them.
And we know this erasure is intentional, we really do, because the agency wrote it down in plain English.
They admitted it.
Yes. The essay points to a literal smoking gun found in the Federal Register. If you look at the 2020 final rule for AFCARS, specifically 85 FR 2410, the government explicitly states its reasoning for this design.
And what do they say?
Well, what's fascinating here is that the agency plainly admits they stripped this identifying data specifically because it could reveal a child's identity.
Wait, they actually put that in the Federal Register?
Yes, in the final rule.
They know exactly what that data could do. They know it could point an adopted person back to their origin, and they are saying, structurally, we cannot allow that.
Exactly. They state there is a significant privacy interest because the data could allow the identification of children. Now, from a purely bureaucratic standpoint, de-identification is standard statistical privacy practice for a research data set.
Sure, you don't want strangers accessing names.
Right. But the result on the human level is absolute. A database with no field for a person's origin didn't simply lose the origin. It was architected without a place to put it.
It is a deliberate set of decisions about what is allowed to exist. In this schema, the absence of the name isn't a gap in the data.
No.
The absence is the data.
Yes, that's a perfect way to put it.
But if we think about this mechanically, a federal database is ultimately just a digital ledger, right?
Right.
The actual physical piece of paper that was filled out by a doctor on the day of birth, the original birth certificate with the real names on it, that still has to exist somewhere.
It does.
The federal government didn't burn it, which means we have to look at where that paper actually goes.
Exactly. The federal government encrypts the digital record, but the individual state holds the original physical document. And that is where the state turns the second key in this architecture.
It's a second lock.
Yes. When an adoption is finalized in court, the state registrar takes the original birth certificate, the OBC, and legally seals it in a vault. And in its place, the state issues what is called an amended certificate.
Let's break down how that amendment actually works.
Yeah.
Because when we hear the word amended, we usually think of like an addendum.
An update.
Yeah. If I amend a contract, I add a note at the bottom clarifying a change. But that is not what a state does to an adoptee's birth record, is it?
No, not at all. It does not annotate the history.
Okay.
It does not say, here's the biological original and here's the legal adoption that followed. It overwrites the history completely.
It literally erases it.
It is a total legal substitution. The amended certificate legally names the adoptive parents as the parents of birth. If you were to look at it, it reads exactly as if you were biologically born to strangers.
The state legally mandates a biological impossibility.
Yes, on a vital record.
And once they seal that original document away, it is locked. Let's look at the actual map of the United States as of July 1st, 2026.
Yeah.
How many states enforce this second lock?
So out of 50 states, only 17 currently have unrestricted access.
Only 17.
That means in 17 states, an adult adoptee can simply request their own OBC, pay a standard administrative fee, and receive it, just like any other citizen.
And the rest.
In the rest of the country, the record is restricted. You have 20 states that are what we call compromised, and then you have 13 states, plus the District of Columbia, that are entirely restricted.
Meaning there is no administrative path to access your own birth record whatsoever.
Correct. None at all.
I want to dig into that middle category, the 20 compromised states. What does that actually look like mechanically? Because compromise sounds like, I don't know, a bureaucratic gray area. What hurdles are people actually jumping over?
Well, a compromised state means there is conditional access, and it's usually heavily weighted against the adoptee. You might have to navigate what they call a legislative donut hole.
A donut hole. And what is a donut hole in this context?
It means the law restricts access based on the specific year you were born.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. For example, a state might pass a law saying records are open, but only for people born after 1990 or before 1960. If your birth year falls into the middle, the donut hole, your record remains sealed by default.
That's entirely arbitrary.
Completely arbitrary. Other compromises include disclosure vetoes.
What are those?
That's where a birth parent can simply fill out a form that legally blocks the adult adoptee from ever seeing their own original birth certificate.
So a third party can just veto your access to your own vital record.
Yes. And some states even mandate education requirements, meaning a grown adult has to sit through a state-mandated counseling session just to be handed their own identifying paperwork.
It creates this incredibly absurd contrast. Think about the physical reality of this. You can be a 45-year-old adult.
Right.
You can hold a mortgage, you can be elected to public office, you can be deployed in the military. But if you walk into a state vital records building in one of those 13 entirely restricted states, and you ask for the single piece of paper that proves you were born, a magistrate can look you in the eye and just say no.
Yes.
You have to hire a lawyer and prove you have good and compelling cause to know your own origin.
And when you put the two halves of this machine together, the federal encryption on one side and the state sealing on the other, you see the complete architecture.
The two locks.
Exactly. No layer of the system is fundamentally designed to preserve an adoptee's origin with the intent of returning it to them. In those 17 states where access does exist, it is a reactive override.
They had to fight for it.
Right. It is an exception that reformers have had to legislate against a massive, entrenched default of erasure.
Between the two layers, not one office in the entire structure is charged with the single human task of just keeping your origin safe so they can hand it back to you when you turn 18.
No, that office doesn't exist.
So we've mapped the laws and the data schemas, but a person doesn't just exist in a database. They have to actually walk around to the physical world. How does a person function inside this two-lock system?
The author provides two very clear conceptual frameworks for understanding the lived reality of this architecture. The first is what they term the fifth dimensional split,
which is the enforced lifelong gap between the physical self that lived and the legal self that the paperwork authorized.
Yes. It is the friction between biological reality and legal fiction. And because the one document that could reconcile that gap, the original birth certificate, is sealed in a state vault and federally encrypted beyond reach, that split is held open across an entire lifetime.
Let's ground that in a practical example. How does the fifth dimensional split show up on, say, a random Tuesday?
Well, it shows up at the doctor's office.
Yeah.
You are handed a standard family medical history form. The paper demands physical, biological reality. Does your family have a history of heart disease or certain cancers?
Right.
But your amended birth certificate, the only legal identity the state allows you to hold, demands a legal fiction. It names two people who share none of your DNA as your parents of birth.
Right, so you're sitting there in the waiting room with this impossible choice.
Exactly. The split is the moment you have to decide whether to leave the medical form blank or cross out the word mother and write adoptive mother, constantly managing the state's fiction in a room that requires biological truth.
It's exhausting just thinking about it.
It also shows up when applying for security clearances or a passport, where any discrepancy in a birth record flags you in the system.
You are forced to physically embody a contradiction that the state created, which leads directly to the second framework the author brings up, which is the identity gravity well.
Yes. When you are hyper-present as data but entirely absent as a specific person, it creates a downward pull. It is the structural pull of a missing center.
Wow.
And the reality is that no volume of demographic capture, no amount of being tallied, tracked, and sorted into 186 data points in a federal spreadsheet can ever fill the void of a missing origin.
So what does this all mean? The most chilling realization of this entire deep dive isn't that the system is broken, it is the exact opposite.
Yes.
The people who built AFCARS and drafted these sealing statutes, they weren't villains rubbing their hands together in a dark room. They built a highly efficient statistical instrument, and it is performing perfectly to specification.
To the letter.
It is designed to see populations, but it actively refuses to see persons.
It is the realization that systemic harm doesn't always require malicious intent. It often just requires bureaucratic detachment. It is the cold administrative decision that de-identification is an acceptable trade-off for erasing a person's beginning. The system is functioning exactly as it was designed to function.
But if this system was built by human choices, it can be unbuilt by them.
Absolutely.
And that is where the momentum of this essay shifts. We have to look at the active reform that is dismantling this architecture right now, because the post-tragic reality of this data is that sealing is a default, but it is not an inevitable law of physics.
The data absolutely gives us reason to be clear-eyed but forward-looking. As we noted, 17 states now have unrestricted access.
Which is huge.
It is. That is 17 states affirmatively pushing back against the default of erasure. And this legislative unbuilding is happening as we speak. Virginia just opened its files this very month, July 2026.
Virginia just became the 17th state to formally declare that adults have a fundamental right to their own paperwork.
Yes.
And there's a massive legislative battle happening right now in California that could alter the national landscape entirely.
Yes, California is currently one of those restricted states. You need a court order to access your OBC. But we are tracking California's Senate Bill 381, introduced by Senator Aisha Wahab.
Right.
It has already passed the state Senate with a 35-0 vote, which is a remarkable bipartisan consensus, and it is moving toward a July 1st, 2028 effective date.
And SB 381 is fascinating because it doesn't just do the bare minimum of opening the vault. It actually addresses the mechanics of the lie. What does the bill structurally change?
It does two vital things. First, it unseals the original birth certificate for adult adoptees upon request. It removes the magistrate, removes the court order barrier, and replaces it with a simple administrative process alongside a standard birth-parent contact preference form.
Amazing. And the second thing?
Secondly, and crucially, it repeals the specific provision in California law that previously allowed the amended certificate to omit the true place of birth and the true race of the parents.
That second part is massive.
It changes everything.
It stops the identity rewriting at the point of issuance. It says the state can no longer legally modify geographical and racial reality to match the adoptive parents. It is a literal unbuilding of the machinery of silence.
And this ties directly into the core call to action in the essay, which is the immense power of naming the architecture.
Yes. A silence that is understood as a design loses its disguise as nature. For decades, the culture has treated the sealed adoption record as if it were just the weather.
Right, just something that...
Like it is just a natural, unavoidable phenomenon of relinquishment.
But if we connect this to the bigger picture, treating a system like the weather removes all accountability.
Absolutely.
But this system has an author, it has a date of implementation, it has a rulemaking record in the Federal Register, it has a signature block. Every single aspect of this erasure, from the 15th of the month encryption to the legal overwriting of the original birth certificate, was a conscious decision.
And if it was a decision, it can be decided differently. That is where the actual power lies. Once you stop mistaking a locked vault for a law of nature, you realize that you hold the keys to dismantling it.
Yes.
You aren't fighting a ghost. You are fighting a statute. You aren't fighting the weather. You are fighting a data schema. And schemas can be rewritten. Statutes can be repealed.
We've covered a massive amount of forensic ground today. We started with a federal database, AFCARS, that logs nearly 200 granular facts about a child's out-of-home care, but encrypts their identifier and blurs their birth date to the 15th of the month.
We mapped the state layer, where original birth certificates are locked away and biological history is legally overwritten by an amended document.
Right.
We explored how those two locks enforce a fifth-dimensional split in everyday life, leaving an adopted person fully counted by the state, but entirely unknown to themselves.
And finally, we looked at the mechanical unbuilding happening right now, 17 states restoring access, with Virginia opening this month, and California's SB 381 poised to redefine the limits of state amendment.
I highly encourage you to check out the full essay and the accompanying data dossiers. Go look at these primary sources for yourself. Read the Federal Register excerpts, look at the state map, and truly understand the exact mechanics of how this architecture was built. We've seen today how a data schema can quietly, efficiently dictate what is allowed to exist in a person's life.
It really is a powerful lens to view the whole system through.
It is. So as we wrap up, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. Think about the other massive administrative systems you interact with daily. Your healthcare networks, your financial institutions, your digital footprint. Where else in your life are you being reduced to a de-identified row under the guise of administrative privacy? And what essential parts of your own story are being quietly encrypted away right now by a system performing exactly to specification?